And I've been here at UCI for 12 and a half years, and primarily my clinic practice is at Gottschalk Plaza over on the other side of the campus, and I do a day up at Pavilion 1, and then I do a little bit of inpatient coverage. I'm also doing a little bit of program development with outpatient and inpatient and how we kind of coordinate our diabetes care across the whole continuum of UCI Health. So I'm very happy to be here. And we're going to talk about diabetes, and there's a lot of stuff jammed on some of these slides. So some of the slides I might flip through rather quickly, but again, you've been sent the slide deck if you pre-registered. If you registered just today, they'll go out to you later today, so we can reference. My style is ask questions as we go, because if you're like me, if I wait till the end of the presentation, I forget what I was going to ask about. So just raise your hand, and if we get too off track, I might ask to hold and talk after the talk is done for questions. But feel free to raise your hand for questions. So let me make sure I'm operating quickly. I only work for UCI, so I don't have any stock in meds or anything. We're going to take a look at there's three areas of, three groups of tools in the toolbox for diabetes management. There's the medications that a physician might prescribe for us. The other two are totally in our control, and that's what we eat and how much we move. So those that's the area that I work in, and I help patients understand how their medicines work in relation to what they're eating and how much they're moving. So I do have to understand that. And we're going to talk about the differences between type 1 and type 2. There's still a lot of confusion about exactly what that is, and they are different. However, treatment is very similar. So sometimes that gets confusing. So, a little bit of basic biology. Our blood glucose is regulated by a system of hormonal triggers. And the two main hormones that are used come out of the pancreas, and they are the cells that make those hormones. One is called an alpha cell, and one is called a beta cell. And in the beta cell is where insulin and amylin are made, and insulin is a storage hormone. That means that if I don't have insulin, I am not putting the fuel in the storage tanks. Okay? If I don't have amylin, because the beta cells have died off or are being killed off, then amylin regulates feelings of satisfaction with our food. So when you're done with your lunch today and you're still feeling hungry and you go back to your office and you're rummaging through the cupboards for a cookie and a whatever leftover Christmas stuff we still have in our clinic. I don't know why we're a diabetes clinic and we got boxes of cookies and candies and stuff from our patients. But that's a satiety thing. That's a feeling satisfaction with our food. And amylin is part of that system, and along with traveling to the brain to control that appetite center in the brain. So if I have beta cells that are completely gone or dying off, my appetite is not being regulated very well. So controlling my food is going to be difficult because my hormonal system is not helping me. The other hormone out of the alpha cell is called glucagon, and this little laser thing doesn't work, but glucagon is in the little blue box, and glucagon's job is to travel to the liver and tell the liver to release stored sugar because the blood glucose is dropping. So insulin lowers the blood sugar, glucagon raises the blood sugar, and it's the balance between those two that regulate how our blood glucose stays in a range of basically 70 to 140 no matter what we ate. So So if they had served you a never-ending bowl of pasta here today for lunch and you don't have diabetes, your blood sugar is not going to go over about 140, even if you ate a pound of pasta. If I have pre-diabetes or diabetes, my blood sugar is going to go up because I don't have enough insulin being made to handle that load. Okay? So, and then what's happening in diabetes, not enough insulin or zero. Glucagon is not getting regulated, so what's it doing all the time? Telling the liver to release stored sugar. Well, holy cow, if I don't have enough insulin and my liver keeps dumping out stored sugar, glucose, what's happening to my blood glucose? It's high. And it's like, people will say, I didn't eat for 12 hours and I still have a high blood sugar. That's because the liver never stopped cranking out that glucose. So that's the regulatory, it's all hormone driven in the body. Okay? So once we kind of understand that and get that in our brain, it starts making sense about why we have to pay attention to food, why exercise is going to make a difference, and then where some of the medications that we have for diabetes are working. Okay, so type 1 diabetes generally is diagnosed in pre-puberty, usually. But more and more we're seeing it in late teen, early 20s, and we can have a latent autoimmune destruction of those beta cells, and the type 1 diabetes shows up later in life. So just the oldest person I've seen truly diagnosed with new type 1 diabetes was 72 years old. And they were positive for the antibodies that are attacking those beta cells and killing them off. And that's what type 1 diabetes is. There is no insulin. The beta cells are dead and gone. Okay? And it's about 10% of diabetes cases in this country. The most prevalent group with type 1 diabetes are Northern European ancestry. The highest rate of type 1 diabetes in the world is in Finland. And what's interesting is that type 2 diabetes is increasing rapidly, incidences in China, but so is type 1, and that's a big question mark. Why is type 1 now increasing in a population, an Asian population that's not very common in? It's very interesting what's going on around the world. Type 2, we're losing beta cells, but it's not as fast. I can tell you, I have folks that are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, they can tell you the date. I had someone that was diagnosed November 1st. What's that the day after? Halloween. So they thought, oh my God, it was the Halloween candy and that's what caused it. No, it didn't. It just was a coincidence that the day after Halloween you have type 1 diabetes. But and that's kind of a bummer. You know, that's kind of ruins the whole trick-or-treat experience. But type 2 is the more common type of diabetes. 90% of cases in this country is type 2, generally in adults. However, if you've been paying attention to health news and CDC and population health statistics, it's rising in our teenagers. The youngest so I have 72 as type 1, youngest with type 2, 8 years old. Obese little boy, and on medication and lifestyle. So it's a three-pronged kind of defect. The disease that we can't stop is the destruction of the beta cells. So if somebody figured out how to stop that, we would have a cure for not only type 1, but type 1 we got to do those antibodies, but we could certainly save beta cells in type 2 because we don't have antibodies in the way. And antibodies, remember, are natural things our body builds to kill stuff. And for some reason in type 1, they develop antibodies to the beta cell. And so even if you put new beta cells in that person, like an islet cell transplant, you have to give them all those drugs for anti-rejection because their own body is trying to reject those beta cells too. It is more common in non-Caucasian populations. So if you are Hispanic, Asian, Native American, Pacific Islander, African American, you have a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. It does run in families. No, it does not skip generations. I get that question a lot. A lot of people think it's every other generation. No, it doesn't skip. Okay. So how do we diagnose? A random blood glucose check. Symptoms would be you're telling a doctor, I have more fatigue, I'm thirsty, I'm peeing a lot, I have really dry skin, cotton mouth, I've got a sore on my toe from a shoe that didn't fit right, it's just not healing, and the blood glucose is over 200, it's diabetes. Start treating it. Or fasting, which is generally how most of us are checked by our doctor. And it's actually 2 different lab values, 126 or higher, or the old school glucose challenge. We don't do this. The only population that this is done is in pregnancy. So pregnant women at 24 to 28 weeks, they do a challenge. In the state of California, it's everybody at 24 weeks. And then finally, we can, as of 2011, we can use that hemoglobin A1C, which is an average look at the blood sugar over the last 3 months. And if it's 6.5 or higher, no matter what the fasting blood sugar is, it's diabetes. So I have folks that have a fasting blood glucose of 100 or in the 90s, but their A1C is 7. And they're like, well, I don't have diabetes, my fasting is not over 126. Well, yes you do, because 7 is not normal, okay? So, and I only say yes you do if in the chart the doctor's already told them you have diabetes and they're just kind of, fighting about that. I go, no, this is what it is. So let's do something about it. Okay, so those are the oral meds for diabetes. The families. So there's several within each family. And so I have this list, or your doctor has this list of choices. We have the old school glipizide and glimepiride types. Those are usually once or twice a day. They are going to the pancreas and encouraging whatever insulin that pancreas is still able to make, get it out. Get it out into the bloodstream so that it's there to do its job of putting the calories away. The side effect on that is weight gain and low blood sugar reactions. The most prescribed medication in type 2 is metformin. It is a turtle of a drug. It doesn't cause lows, and it's not cranking on that pancreas. And there's a lot of evidence that points to maybe starting with glipizide type of medication, you're actually going to speed up the destruction of those beta cells. So the first line drug recommendation in this country is metformin. You start with metformin and lifestyle, and then you look at adding other medications, because you don't want to wear out the pancreas faster than it's going. Metformin is in the fenformin family, so there's a little bit of appetite control. And its site of action is the liver. So what's it doing? If its job is to do something in the liver, what's that liver doing in type 2 diabetes and in type 1? It's releasing sugar. So metformin helps to fix that defect, okay, which is nice. The TZDs are not very popular right now. There's a lot of cardiovascular risk associated. DPP-4 inhibitors, they go to the pancreas, but they're specific to mealtime. I don't know how they know this. I don't know how taking a pill and it's smart enough to know blood sugar is rising because of a meal, and then it helps improve the release of insulin from the pancreas. Okay. The ones in red, those are the newest family. They work at the kidney. What is the kidney doing? Kidney, when the blood glucoses get to 180 or higher consistently, the kidney is then allowing glucose to drop into the urine as a way to try to help lower that blood glucose. So a brainiac in a lab somewhere said, well, what if we figured out what triggers that in the kidney, and we found a drug that told the kidney, go ahead, let that glucose drop in the urine all the time. Don't wait for the blood glucose to get too high. And here we have the SGLT2s. Okay? The next, but below that, acarbose-maglitol. Those are, in the health food store, they would be called a starch blocker. They prevent some of the carbohydrate that you ate from being digested. Now, the side effect that most people don't like and will stop taking this medication because of that is that undigested carbohydrate in the intestine ferments. Now, what does that mean? A lot of gas. A lot of gas. A lot of gas that I've had patients didn't leave their house for 3 weeks because they were too embarrassed. So it's bad gas. It's really, really bad. And the more carbohydrate you eat, the more gas you get. So the idea is, is it more like a behavior modification tool that I learn, oh, if I don't eat that big bowl of rice, I don't get so gassy, and so then they're not eating as much rice anymore and eating more vegetables. But it doesn't lower blood glucose a lot, but it helps. The old bile acid sequestrant was an old cholesterol drug. If you're as old as me, you remember you poured this powder in water and you drank it down, and that helped lower your cholesterol. That's before we had statins, before we had Mevacor. Turns out that lowers the A1C about 0.5%. So that works like fiber. So what am I thinking? If I don't want to take more medication and I can eat more fiber, I can lower my A1C 0.5%, right? Okay, start thinking about other alternatives. And then dopamine agonist is a blood pressure medication that turns out it helps with, it can lower blood glucose too. So you can have patients, I have patients come in and they're on 5 different drugs. They're on one from every section. And sometimes that's because the doctors and the patient are not willing to start insulin. Nobody wants to take insulin. These are injected type 2 medications. So amylin is type 1 and type 2. So GLP-1 inhibitors. These are either twice a day injection, once a day, or once a week injection now. And they do a very similar thing. They help that pancreas release the insulin at meal times. They help with appetite control and feeling satisfied with our food. We eat a little bit less, and we had people asking to go on these medications when they came out of the approval gate. And we said, you have to inject. Oh, I'll inject that one. Well, you won't inject insulin. Why will you inject this one? Because what did they hear? The first one that came out was exenatide, and that one, average weight loss is 7 pounds with that, without changing anything. And so these are pretty popular. Amylin, that's one of those hormones that comes out of the beta cell, controls appetite, controls feelings of satiety, and so we have an injected version of amylin. So someone could be taking insulin and amylin to replace what's not being released by those beta cells. Okay? So, the metabolic defects in type 2. So type 1 is what? No insulin, start taking insulin. And maybe some amylin if they're really going to go for it. Okay? Type 2, you got this. I'm targeting kidneys, liver, pancreas, brain, intestine. Lots of targets to help medically control blood glucose. So they used to call it the ominous octet. It's now the egregious 11. Because now we're learning that the gut bacteria, the good bacteria in our gut, are also in the mix regulating our blood glucose. So now we got to look at that too. And so we've got lots of targets that are influencing what our blood glucose is doing day to day, hour by hour, week to week. Okay? So, is it confusing to patients and doctors? Absolutely. And I'll have patients say, I think you guys are just experimenting with me. Because last month it was this month you're adding that. I come in 3 months and you're tweaking something else. And it's like, well, it is, because we got to find what one is for you going to work the best. Okay, right? So our targets are basically to control the blood glucose, but I got to look at, can I help with appetite control so that as I'm trying to eat less food, I'm not starving all the time? How do I get the fat cells from misbehaving? One, I can reduce the number of fat cells that got hanging around, right? So I can do that with food and exercise. But there are some medications that can kind of compensate for that. The thing about all these medications is we can out-eat any of them, even insulin. If I'm not eating appropriately for my body and my diabetes, my doctor's adding more and 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 more. So it's always looking at matching what my lifestyle is and what medications are going to help regulate blood glucose. And if I don't do anything on this side, then my medication list gets longer and longer and longer. So finding that balance is what we're looking for. So insulins, we've got 4 big families, and the ones in red are the newest ones. And because as a nation we're getting heavier and heavier, and insulin requirement is based on weight, we are getting concentrated insulins available. Because 100 units of something like Lantus is what I need, but that's a big old puddle of insulin in my tummy every day. And if I'm using a pen, the pen only goes to 80. So now I go 80 units and then dial it to 20 and do 20. So I get that 100 units. Well, if I switch to Lantus 300, which is Glargine 300, I still dial the pen to 100, but my volume is 2/3 less, because it's 3 times as concentrated. So instead of 100, I have still 100 units of action insulin, but the volume now is lower, so I don't have a big old puddle of insulin sitting there. And those options have come out because of body size. We're still getting larger. We're not getting smaller yet. And then we have a semi-generic Lantus that just hit the market last month. It's made by Eli Lilly, Basaglar. They call it, the FDA, you can be generic, brand name, or biosimilar. So it's biosimilar. So it's not quite the generic pricing bucket. It's kind of an in-between pricing bucket. So Lantus is still pretty expensive, about $150 for a pen, I think. And then the Basaglar is about $75. Anyway. So understanding how our insulins work. So a lot of folks are going to be on 1 shot a day, gives me a little background insulin to kind of just regulate fasting blood glucoses. It's not strong enough for food. And then if my blood glucoses are still rising after I eat, then my doctor's going to add one of the quick-acting insulins like aspart, glulisine, or Lispro, and I take it right before I eat. And it only lasts for about 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours for most people. And that's just a picture of how all the different insulins work. This is what I had to learn. To start understanding when someone's taking insulin, and for me to help them understand what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, I have to know this. And once I understand this, then I know, okay, if you're on a fast-acting insulin, that black, that's my opportunity to eat, because that's matching what my blood sugar is doing. But if I'm only on that red flat line, then I have to be real careful about how much I eat, because if I eat too much, my blood sugar's going to spike up pretty well. Okay. So that's how our body normally does it. At meal spikes, on the top is the glucose after eating breakfast, lunch, supper, and HS means evening. And you can see the insulin response, right? Big burst of insulin to match what the blood sugar is rising. So that's what we're trying to copy with all that we're doing, whether it's pills, insulin, food, and exercise. We're trying to mimic or produce that same kind of result so that blood glucoses are in a healthy range. So we have insulin delivery options, we have pumps, we have pens, we have the old school bottles and vials, and in the hospital we also use IV insulin. I circled Medtronic because this spring their pump and their continuous glucose sensor they're integrated now, but they're going to be integrated to regulate some of the insulin delivery by that pump. So as the blood glucose is being sensed, it's rising, the pump will automatically increase some insulin delivery. And as the blood glucose drops, it will decrease the insulin delivery. And if it drops below the line in the sand that you draw, it'll stop insulin delivery until the blood glucose has gotten back into the safe zone, and then it'll resume that. So they're calling it artificial pancreas, but it's not quite there yet, because when you're ready to eat, you're still going to have to pull that pump out, say I'm eating 50 grams of carb, my blood glucose is whatever, and it calculates a dose, and you go okay, and you push a button and it delivers that dose of insulin for the meal. So it's not doing that, it's just doing that background, regulating the fasting blood glucose pretty well. So that's going to be interesting to see when it comes out. It's supposed to come out in May. It's partially there right now, but full function. The other pump companies are working on the same thing. You might have heard. Actually, we're competing with a talk from my diabetes clinic called the bionic pancreas. So there's someone talking about that, which is a fully integrated system to deliver insulin and glucagon and really regulate the blood glucose with those two hormones. Okay. There must be 100 different meters out on the market to check your blood sugar with. And more are moving to Bluetooth, so you can see your results on your phone, and then track and log and do all that kind of stuff. We download, so we ask our patients to bring their meter to every visit. We plug it into the computer and print out their logbook, so we can sit down with them and look at different days or different meals, or to see what's going on. So there's lots of choices out there. The one at the very top I was very excited because it plugs into the bottom of your iPhone, but look at the plug-in. The very next year, Apple changed the port size. And so these guys were basically out of business until they could redesign their pump to plug into the bottom of a phone. So I thought that was rather cruel to do. Okay. And these are the continuous sensors. There's actually, this one has been renamed. This one in the middle, has been renamed, made by the same company. It's called Libre right now, and that's how it looks now. So this one morphed from this to that. But what these do is you insert with an insertion device and a needle a small wire under the skin into the subcutaneous fat, and it's left there. It's left there for this one right now. It's 6 days. Up top, Dexcom is 7 days, and Libre is 2 weeks. And it's left there, and it's sensing the glucose in the liquid of that area, not the blood. So that is then that information is transmitted to these devices that have the software programming to convert that information into a blood glucose value. And so what's displayed on your receiver is blood glucose value. So at the top right, it says 202 in that yellow section. That's the current blood glucose, and every 5 minutes that number gets updated. And then the curve is your graph. Where has it been? So this 202, if you look at the far right tail on that graph, it's a 202 that's coming up from, the red line was their low alert line. They wanted to be, so they obviously ate because their blood glucose was getting low, and it's jumping back up. So now they got to think about, okay, it's coming back up, and if it was coming up quickly, there would be one arrow pointing up next to the 202. If it's coming up very quickly, 2 arrows next to that 202 pointing up. So it knows 1 minute, 1 point a minute's going up, 2 points a minute's going up. They have now diagonal directional arrows, and same thing for down. And then if it's running flat, basically stable, then there's a horizontal arrow. So you get a lot of information. I do a finger stick. That tells me what my blood glucose is right now. Doesn't tell me where it's been. And I might be able to predict where it's going because I just ate lunch. But this actually gives you a perspective. What is it doing? Where is it going? And what do I need to do something about it? So it's pretty cool. And we have a lot of patients wearing that technology. And same thing, they bring in their devices, we plug them into our computer and print out all their data for review. Okay, so exercise. I hate to exercise. I don't like to sweat. I have a gym membership. I haven't been to that gym in probably 20 years. I have a dog that would love if I would take him for a walk. And you know, my instinct, I'm a Southern California born and bred, my instinct today is go home and hunker down because oh my gosh, it's, you know, the storm of the century. And I went to Chicago in January 3 years in a row, and I thought, who would choose to live in Chicago? It's 7 degrees outside, it's windy, there's snow up to here, there's ice on the streets, my glasses are fogging up, I can't see anything. It was just icicles off the cars as they're driving by. I'm like, who does this? But apparently a lot of people do. I would never survive in something like that. So what we have to worry about with diabetes, though, is hypoglycemia, because exercise lowers blood glucose. Now, it may lower it right away while you're exercising, up to 24 hours after that exercise episode. So this is a big concern for a lot of people. And then in my type 2 population, they have other medical problems. They have arthritis, or they have heart failure, or they have breathing difficulties. So there's barriers to, medical barriers to, working out and doing a spin class or something like that. So what we know, it's still, same old, same old. Got to do something cardio, do something for strength and flexibility, and the cardio you want to do most days of the week, strength and flexibility at least 3 days of the week. So what are we talking about? 150 minutes per week cardio. That's the minimum. You can do more, but that's the minimum. So what does that translate to? In the study that came out of was folks were doing 30 minutes 5 days a week, and most all of them were walking. They're just putting on their tennis shoes and taking a walk. Now, if I'm a jogger or a swimmer, marathon runner, I'm doing spin classes, the time can shorten because that's a more intense exercise. So the intensity can make a difference. And it turns out that, or how to test for intensity, I like this one, talk test. I should be able to carry on a conversation with someone I'm walking with comfortably, not feel short of breath. If I can sing a song to that person, I'm not walking fast enough. Okay? So you don't need to walk so fast that you're huffing and puffing and feeling like you can't keep up. But you do want to work at a certain level. And then we can use target heart rate. And I'm sure in the exercise stuff, equipment here, in the gym here, there's opportunity to look at that. See what that is. But it turns out that short bouts are even more effective for weight reduction than a single 30 or 60-minute bout of exercise. So that's where I talk to folks about, that when I get the pushback, I don't have time. I'm chained to my desk here at UCI Department XYZ. I eat my lunch at my desk. I don't take breaks. And you've got this Aldrich Park and Ring Road, and from Gottschalk Plaza, it's such a beautiful walk over to Aldrich Park and then back. Parking the car further away, not the closest structure or lot that your parking permit will allow you. Those are things that we can do to increase our physical activity. But short bouts will do the same thing. So 3 10-minute walks, can you do something like that? Or 2 15-minute walks. I have a teacher that no time, every evening, got to grade papers. So it was basically kind of a weekend warrior. So we talked about when you're grading papers at night, what is that like? Well, I flip on the TV as kind of background noise and I grade papers. And so, what if at the commercial breaks, you get up and you just walk around your living room, not walking to the refrigerator and back with food, but going to walking around the living room or doing some jumping jacks or push-ups or something at the break. And then when the program comes back on, you sit back down and grade more papers. Came back in, I think it was about 3 months, and had instituted that. And was thrilled, one, they were doing it, because in a 1-hour program there's 22 minutes of commercials. So you do 22 minutes of exercise in a 1-hour program. That has commercial breaks. So 2 things were happening. Weight came down, blood sugars were better, but the thing that really impressed him was he was grading papers faster. Because what did that little bit of exercise, that mental break do? Energized him, and he could focus more on that task, and he got through those papers faster. So that's what he was really happy about, was he felt it was actually saving time. By taking that break time, he was actually saving time. So bouts help. Having an exercise buddy, that's what, when I was exercising regularly 2 days a week, because my next door neighbor and I, after we had our first kid, we said, okay, we joined the little women's gym down the street, and we went every Tuesday night and Thursday night because her husband was babysitting for us. It took me, my goal was, we took an aerobics class, and my goal was to be able to keep up with the instructor, beat for beat, every exercise. It took me a year to do that, only going 2 days a week. But that was the best. Just with that was beneficial. So having someone that you're responsible to can help get us motivated and going. So for safety and diabetes, we always want to know, what is my blood glucose and what's the effect of exercise on my blood glucose? Because if you don't know what exercise is doing to your blood glucose, then you can get into trouble quickly. Okay? Be safe, wear the right stuff. Don't be exercising in your flip-flops or sandals. Wear tennis shoes, wear appropriate clothing, have your medical ID, have some carbs, and have your meter available. So let's talk about the 3 things I kind of alluded to. What do we eat? How much do we eat? When do we eat? So what do we eat? Well, we eat carbs, right? And we really like them. And there's different kinds of carbohydrates. And because there's different kinds of carbohydrates, they have different effects on our blood glucose. So which ones are going to, I kind of put carbohydrates in 2 buckets. It's going to rush in and raise my blood glucose quickly, or it's going to dribble in. It's going to come in a little more slowly and a little more gradually. That's easier on my system if I have limited insulin. So which of these are kind of helpful?
Whole grains, especially.
Yeah, so the dribblers are the higher fiber whole foods, not processed half to death. So your lunch is a lot of whole carbohydrate, okay? So that's great. Milk and yogurt, sugars, syrups, jams, and jellies are a little faster. And the milk and yogurt depends on the fat content. Fat slows things down. So non-fat milk can raise blood glucose as fast as juice. So we got to be careful. Doesn't make them bad. Number one consumed food in this country by all age groups is grain-based desserts. That's the kind of carbohydrate we eat in this country, the most of. What's a grain-based dessert? You had one today.
Cake.
Carrot cake, right? So cakes, cookies, Twinkies, all that stuff. Donuts. So best choice is actually legumes. So eat your beans. They're great. Next best is whole grains, and that's some of the whole grains that are great for us. The fiber in rye, oats, barley, and brown rice actually lower cholesterol too. And so do the fiber in your legumes, your beans, naturally lower the cholesterol. Watch what you drink. If I'm drinking my carbohydrates, I've done experiments for myself. When I drink my carbohydrate, my blood sugar shoots up 100 points. And right away it goes back down 100 points. But drinking my calories is not the best. And this is why it shoots it up so fast. Cranberry juice cocktail, we've got 12 teaspoons of sugar in that a 12-ounce bottle. Orange juice is about 10. A regular soda is about the same as orange juice. So I'm better off with water, coffee, tea, not adding a bunch of stuff to it. We eat a lot of sugar in this country. So this is just to illustrate, it really doesn't matter the type of sugar or where the sugar comes from, because it all has fructose in it. Sucrose is table sugar. It's 50-50 fructose. High fructose corn syrup. It's still almost a 50-50. So we're not changing by switching to sugar. So Sprite now has real sugar in it. That hasn't changed how much fructose I'm slugging down. I'm still slugging down fructose. And fructose increases free fatty acids. Free fatty acids are atherogenic. They're pro-inflammatory. They're raising blood pressure. They're raising sugars, and they're raising cholesterol, bad cholesterol. So they're bad. We want all our fructose coming from a piece of fruit, which is a lot lower. But you can see over the top line is overall use of sugar, whether it's high fructose corn syrup or sucrose in this country. We're eating more and more and more. And so this past year ago, January, every 5 years, Healthy Eating for Americans comes out. And last January, for the first time, it wasn't eat fewer calories. It was eat less sugar. And I've been doing this for over 30 years, and that was the first time sugar made it to the top of we got to eat less sugar, and calories got bumped down. Okay, what about our proteins? We're carnivores, and we might also be, or we might be vegetarian or vegan. And so these are all protein sources. Protein on its own does not raise the blood glucose. However, an all protein, no carbohydrate diet is really, really dangerous for the kidneys. So it's not recommended. It might help jumpstart some weight loss. You know, I'm eating chicken, fish, and all veggies like kale and spinach and salads and carrots and tomatoes and stuff like that. And yeah, in the first few months I'm going to lose a ton of weight. But at some point I got to start adding some carbohydrate back in, because long term that's an unhealthy way of eating. What about fats? Well, this is the only place I talk about good fats, good, and the words good and bad. All food is good, but when it comes to fat, there is good fat and bad fat. And the bad fats are saturated or trans fat, and they actually increase LDL cholesterol and its collecting property on the blood vessel. So I want polyunsaturated or mono, and actually mono is better. That's the best. So any of those, you know, olive oil, canola oil, peanut, avocado, nuts and seeds, fish and shellfish, those are better sources of fat in our food supply supply than the processed stuff, which has the hydrogenated stuff, the trans fat, and saturated fat. And tropical oils are still a saturated fat category. So coconut oil, palm kernel oil are still considered a saturated fat. Now if you really, you've bought into the coconut thing, coconut water is okay, but I would stay away from coconut oil. I've seen some folks with their cholesterol go up when they made that switch to coconut oil. You had a question?
I was going to ask about
The coconut, yeah, coconut oil not. And coconut milk has the oil in it, so look at it, there is, I've seen lower fat coconut milks on the market, so if that's part of your cuisine repertoire is to put some coconut milk in a traditional dish that you make, try for the lower fat versions of that. Yeah?
On the topic of the coconut oil, because I remember reading something about there's different, the medium chain is actually nice stuff.
Yeah, it is, but they didn't get rid of the saturated fat part of it. So the saturated fat is what's atherogenic. It is causing bad cholesterol results. So if they could get rid of the saturated fat component and it's only the medium chain size triglycerides in there, then it would be a healthy fat to use. But they're not doing that. So. And this is where we've kind of gotten off track too as a Western diet. Our balance of omega-6s to omega-3s. So omega-3 fatty acids they help lower triglycerides. They're really good in autoimmune diseases. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, things like that, the omega-3s are really great. And basically it's getting away from the four-legged critters and doing eating more of the zero-legged critters. Okay? So I tell folks my protein choice, the fewest legs it had in life, that's the best choice. So it's going to be swimming things with fins, right? Plant sources of protein. And then two-legged, okay, but four-legged, not so great. And it's this omega-6 to omega-3 balance. So we got to find our balance again. We've gotten so skewed over to the left here that our body is suffering for it. So we need to get more of that stuff on the right into our day. So best is extra virgin, and there is a difference between extra virgin and just regular olive oil. So it is that first press extra virgin that has the most kind of bang for its buck, for the big bucks too. But avocado, so in Southern California here, there's a lot of avocado trees in people's yards. My neighbor has one, and the branches that hang over the fence, that's free game. Those are my avocados. But he has said anything you want to harvest off the tree is fine. So we're not stealing, right? But that's a great source. The type of fat in avocado. Nuts and seeds. You can go to Trader Joe's and an ounce of tree nuts a week lowers cholesterol about 10%. So go to Trader Joe's, get the already 16-ounce bag with the 16 1-ounce things in there, and have one of those a day. Eat them one nut at a time to help with this appetite center and feeling satisfied with that snack. Because I open the pack, pour it in my hand, and go. 5 minutes later, I'm like, where's the food? I'm still hungry. So take your time. Of course, nuts and seeds. Flaxseed, how much? This is where we can get it. So there, in your handouts, there is a little grid of generally how many calories at age and whether you're male or female to be eating. And this is what I use. For diabetes, I get rid of the fruit section and we do half a plate of non-starchy vegetables, like today your kale and cabbages, everything in your salad, non-starchy, a little bit of whole grain, which or carb, and I think there might have been some potato in your soup. So that's where that would be. And then your protein was, I saw chunks of some kind of meat in there. And then the fruit or a dairy might be in addition to that. And that's what it might look like. And there's also the Mediterranean diet plan and the DASH diet plan are extremely well validated in the literature. So these have been shown to improve the chronic disease and inflammatory state, so we have better blood pressures, better cholesterols, and better glucose management in diabetes. Okay, and you can see the focus is on produce. Now, when to eat is based on your medication regimen for diabetes. So insulin is going to have its own set of kind of rules around when do I eat, when do I not eat, and some of our oral medications will also dictate meal timing. But if I'm only on metformin, I can eat whenever. Even though they tell you take metformin with your meal in the morning and with your meal at dinner time, you can eat whatever time you want. You don't have to eat breakfast at the same time every day. So if I sleep in on the weekends and my breakfast is at 10 o'clock and that's when I take my metformin, that's okay. Right? So our medication regimen is what really dictates the when. If I want appetite control because I'm trying to drop a few pounds and I don't want this big influencer, undermining my efforts, then eating about every 2 or 3 hours something helps to help regulate that. And I like a high fiber carb with a little bit of protein at each episode that you're going to eat at. And that's a nice balance. It helps keep the food in the stomach a little bit longer, and you get a smoother glucose response in your body if you have diabetes. And of course, there's an app for that. So check out your app stores for ways to track everything. There's a few apps that you can take a picture of a plate of food. There's a professor here that have been connected with, that he and one of his PhD students is working on an app for diabetes where you take a picture of what you're going to eat and it tells you how many carbs are there, how many calories. If you've entered in your insulin requirements based on carbohydrate count, it'll calculate your dose, and then you enter in your blood glucose, it'll calculate if you got it correct or whatnot. So it's your glucose log, and it's also a step tracker, so it can track how much you've walked so far, today. So I'm really looking forward to them. I've got it was really ironic because the next 4 patients that came in were complaining about, how come there's not an app where I can do all this on one platform? I was like, funny you should ask. And so I have a short list of beta testers that when they're ready to try that out, they want to, and that's what I love about being in an academic environment is seeing stuff like that happen. So what's the future? I talked about the bionic pancreas. This picture is actually a contact lens to measure your blood glucose. That's in development. This is like a Fitbit type of device that would also track blood glucose. And we also have Ford Motor Company. They've developed a software in a prototype car that can talk to your glucose sensor. So your center display is your glucose, so you can watch it as well, hopefully you're not watching it as you're driving, but you can see what your blood glucose is doing while you're driving, and blood pressure, heart rate, that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And those are some of the resources that I use frequently for information. Any other questions? I kind of rushed through, but check your emails for the slide deck, and then watch for the posting of the video so that you can, rewind and listen to me over and over and over. And if it's on YouTube, just click, 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 so I get lots of views, right? Okay, thank you.